You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to find out more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where you'll find all of our past podcasts and other blog posts that we have up, along with some other items that you can purchase to help support the Beardcast. So we hope you enjoy listening to this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have a very, very special guest with us. We have the Rev.Mike Slaughter on. Thanks, Mike, for being on with us.
Oh, man, I love it. I'm honored you guys would have me, yeah.
Thanks. We're honored for you to be here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, and we'll just kind of start there.
Well, I first of all, as a teen, I had kind of rough teenage years. I was busted twice before I was 18. Once we ran this was like in the hippie years, we ran this teen club called Lost Dimension. And to me, that had no theological meaning for me at the time, but it was really a state of where I was. I even posted on Facebook the other day, like grades for my junior year. I finished with like 4 F's and a D-.
Oh, man.
And I had a real encounter with Jesus. The real Jesus, kind of a calling in my life. I began, at the University of Cincinnati, man, the Jesus movement was going on. We got involved in the first Earth Day and so forth, working for civil rights. I mean, we really, the Jesus movement, which kind of got hijacked by the institutional church, but we really understood that to be heavenly minded meant to be earthly good. So I saw the best place to do that was the local church, to kind of be a force of renewal in the local church. I spent 45 years working in the local church, 3 churches, but the last one for 38 years at Ginghamsburg Church, and some amazing things happened out of this little rural church where we now have low-income housing in the Dayton, Ohio area. We have 6 men's resident recovery homes. We have Jobs for Life programs. We have a medical warehouse for the uninsured and underinsured. I still pastor emeritus there, speak 8 to 10 times a year. But I started, Lau Schauler mentored me when I was in my 30s, and he was the age I am now. I'm 67 now. And he said, Mike, God's using you when you get into your middle 60s, spend the next 10 to 15 years just investing in the next generation. So I've started this ministry, Passionate Churches LLC, and I'm working. We've started some base camps where we do an intense 5-day program teaching how to develop 501c3s and so forth to next generations. Writing, speaking at conferences. I'm going to be in Kansas City weekend after this coming weekend, working with a smaller church on Friday and Saturday. Then I'm preaching at Church of the Resurrection on Saturday and Sunday. And then I'm a delegate to our, special general conference coming up in St. Louis here in less than 3 weeks. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I was working with three churches in low income, high risk areas up in Michigan this past weekend. So that's kind of where God's called me.
Yeah, I love that. That invitation or advice to, hey, when you get to this point, invest in the next, right? That's huge. Yeah. You don't see a lot of that. And so for us being our age, coming up and doing what we're doing, that's huge. To have people that we can look toward to, and those mentors that care about the future of the church and people, and it's huge.
I love my age because, man, age brings wisdom, a knowledge of God, an experience of God's love that I didn't have. I had God's love here when I was your age, but not the experience. It's still that performance thing that God's got to be disappointed, because God knows my thoughts, lust, and all that kind of stuff. And the acceptance and love of God at my age. And I really understand why the Bible so values age, that Abraham was 75 before God said, you got to go to someplace new.
Right.
And it wasn't till Moses was 80 that he changed his focus and heard God in a different way out of the burning bush. So, I want to say to you two brothers who are in your 30s and anyone else, is that age is a beautiful thing. You know, you have to just stay healthy, body, mind, and spirit. Yeah. And that has everything to do how we eat, exercise, our relationships. You know, God is love. And I think that's the most important thing. And how do we demonstrate that is we demonstrate God's love to all people.
Yeah. No, it's nice to see that. You see so many pastors who retire and just go, and be done, and not invest back, and for a number of reasons, right? We get burned out and spend them 30, 35, 40, 50 years doing this thing. It'll wear on you. So I'm told, right? And so it's, what a model, and what great advice you got, back when you were our age. And that's definitely something I will take into heart moving forward. Yeah.
And that will definitely be something, in my current appointment, I have 5 or 6 retirees that are connected to our congregation. Some of them know what they want to do, and they've invested either in the church or in the community in some other way. But a couple of them are, I think, searching for something for their next thing. And so this might be something, I might point them in this direction, just to say, hey, listen to what Mike Slaughter has to say about this, and you might find some life in that.
Well, we have lay folk in our church, seniors. What I encourage people to do, I don't do the traditional Methodist thing of, nomination form. We need you on this committee or that committee. We have no committees, but it's like, what is your burning bush? Mm-hmm. And we have one, Evelyn Alder. She's 81 or 2. She created a community of women around her to do this. It's called the Gleaning Place. It's a store in a little town called West Milton. And they have nice used kind of things. Like when my wife and I moved and we downsized, we had nice things. And so we give it there. She has this community of 25 people, all volunteers that she works with. And their whole purpose is to sell stuff that no one's paid, to raise money to throw into our 501c3s. They've raised about $600,000 through that store in that community, and she's 81, 82 and works 50 to 60 hours a week, no pay. Ron Will, he's 73. He's the one that had this vision for, at 62, Joshua Recovery Ministries. They're the ones that now have 6 houses, men's resident houses. He's not paid a dime. He works, again, 50, 60 hours a week. All this was birthed out of his vision. They have a counseling center now, and this year opening 2 women's homes for pregnant women that are addicted, because you can't take them off of opioids and everything, or kill the baby. So all of this, these miracles, the medical warehouse facility we have for the underinsured and underinsured was started by a group of people that had that vision. They would then create a team. They go out to hospitals, nursing homes that get rid of medical wheelchairs, walkers, and so forth. They rehab all this stuff, clean it up, rehab it, and make it available. And that goes out to several states. All of these visions were born out of lay folks who identify their vision and call. And many, I can't think of anyone that gets paid, even though sometimes people on their teams get paid. Obviously, the household managers of these houses, but again, they were all born. And it's the reason I wrote 2 books. One was Dare to Dream, and the other was Made for a Miracle, is for lay folk who are my sheroes and heroes, to really identify that burning bush. What is that burning bush? And the church, we have this professional model of ministry that you go off to seminary and do that kind of stuff. And I always say, no, it's about the anointing, not the appointing. Mm-hmm. And we're not there, right, to do the work of ministry. We're there to equip the saints, for work of ministry, and not box ministry. Some people have that calling, to teach kids or lead small groups or teach Bible studies, to hospitality, ministries of hospitality. But most people will have a burning bush to go out into the community in some way, to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah. Right. Back when I was in campus ministry at a Wesley Foundation in New Mexico, when I applied and took that job, the expectation was, hey, you're going to have all these college students, you're going to send them to seminary. Oh, no. It was, when they go into nursing school, into engineering, and to be teachers and to do all of the things that they feel called to do, we want to find ways to send them out to do that and to share Jesus in those moments, in those spaces. Not everyone's called to go to seminary. God, we'd be so boring if we were all called to do that.
The cost of seminary education that, we come out, maybe make $36,000 a year and have $90,000 debt is ridiculous. That creates such stress on families. There's got to be a new model.
Right.
I did a video series with Phyllis Tickle about 4 years ago out in Minneapolis, and I loved her stuff. It was so great. I was honored. One of my sheroes that, because then she passed a couple years ago, but her whole thing is every 500 years there's a seismic shift that happens in the church. The 500 was the monastic movement that kind of saved the church from Constantinian, kind of institutional. 1054, there was the East-West split. Then 1500, the Reformation. And she believes right now we're in that same kind of seismic shift. And I believe the same thing. The mega model is not the model of the church. I'm thinking of a next book right now was, what's next after the church growth movement, because that was kind of one, break these barriers, 200, 400. I was up at Temple United Methodist Church in Muskegon this past weekend, under 100 attendees, very inclusive, very diverse. But the social ministries they have in this community, being the hands and feet of Jesus, I told my wife last night, I said, that is authentic. Even though we live right here in Cincinnati in the midst of this crossroads, the fastest growing church in America, and my daughter and her family are there, but Crossroads would not be able to do that ministry in that neighborhood that church, is in. So I think there's various models of ministry, and the United Methodists have this numbers neurosis, or this fear of what we're going to go through, right. Or whatever. We need to look at new models. One of the best stories at Ginghamsburg, we have multiple campuses. Two of our campuses are 80% non-white that they're in the inner city with various ministries, GED programs, and so forth. That were the 40-old, before we took them over, were the 40-old white people all over 60 when the neighborhood transitioned and they moved out but came back to their home church. But a great story, and this church would be more blue collar, motorcycle, hard living. Mike Berry came to Ginghamsburg as a drug addict, alcoholic, disciple for 6 years. We took over this kind of very blue collar, white, kind of church outside the Dayton area. He went in to that church as pastor. Now he was a layperson, 6 years disciple. So I had to put my name on it because he wasn't even licensed local.
Right.
Even though I've never preached in that church. That church now is the 7th largest attendance in our West Ohio conference. And he's just hitting that 1,300 attendance a week. And he's got 12th grade education. Right. We got, see, there's what you're saying about lay people. Mm-hmm. My son, he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he's in Cincinnati now, Jesus follower. But when he was doing his residency at Penn, an Ivy League school, and he's a double Penn graduate, Ivy League graduate, he went to Epic Church in Philadelphia. And this is an independent church. Mm-hmm. The pastor is Cherokee. He's 37. He's my son's age. In 10 years, they're on 4 campuses, very diverse. When I spoke there, I was the oldest There might have been a few others, but yeah. And my son would call me now, double Ivy League graduate. He's in a church. He was raised in Ginsburg Church, so he has this diversity, all that, thinking. He's upset about how we sometimes treat LGBTQ folks. And he would call me Sunday nights and said, "You ought to heard Kent's sermon, Dad, today. It's one of the best I ever heard." So my double Ivy League smart surgeon son chose a church with a pastor with a 12th grade education. You see, this is what we've got to see, because our current system is not set up to multiply in diverse ways. We can't move. We're not lean and mean enough with the bureaucracy, we have, our appointment system. Right. And we need something leaner that is more networked versus connectional.
Right.
And I've been studying some movements, and one of the latest that really you have to point to a beginning 1982 is the Vineyard movement. And they're more, they have common DNA, but not tight control, of how they're networked.
Right.
And another was the Salvation Army when they broke. Now that's older and stiff. They still have an incredible social ministry.
Right.
So what is the next? Go back to the Phyllis Tickle. What is the next that we see? And I just think there's many, many models.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, Mike, you kind of shared with us in the beginning about some of the things you're doing in regards to mentoring and stuff. If you had to go back and talk to yourself at our age, we're in our mid-30s, what would be some advice you would share to people like us?
Well, are you married?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I did was so pour myself into the church and what was happening, because, man, it took off. And that's kind of where I was getting my esteem, because, we had these two young kids when I was your age. And I would come home and Carolyn would be going, hey, you're not doing what you need to do and everything else. And yet when I would travel and speak at conferences, because by the time I was your age, when Ginsburg hit 400 in this little rural company, that became a big deal. And conferences asked me to come start speaking. And we had more people. At one time, we had like 127 attendants, but we had 200 and some in small group communities. So these kind of, all of that, it was like I wasn't working on my relationship with my wife. So we were like on a very comrades on a common path of what Jesus followers. But it's like we got to like year 20, like when I was 40, and it's like we looked at each other, who the hell are you? Are you allowed to say hell on this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can say whatever you want.
So we almost, June 1st, 1992, we came a day away from getting divorced. And then we just, hey, if Jesus is Lord of your life and he's Lord of my life, God hates divorce. So we're going to lose the D word, the divorce, never use it again. And we're going to make each other a priority over ministry.
Yeah.
Now that's why Paul said it's better to be single, but if you get into the covenant relationship, then that has to be a priority.
Right.
The two shall be one. And I truly believe that we learn to love a monotheistic God who I don't always want to be faithful to, who we can't see, through a monogamous lifelong relationship with a human being. That we can't see. Marriage is hard. Have you? Yeah, you understand that, And we're in our 47th year of marriage, and God does resurrections. And believe me, guys, in the hard times, hang in there, because it's a beautiful thing right now. Now it's still a lot of work, because I've got this going on. My wife's getting her car oil change, all that kind of stuff, antifreeze, chain. So she's sitting at the car dealer right now for a couple hours,
Right.
Because I got this stuff going on. Now, I know she doesn't like sitting there in the car,
Right. Yeah.
So I think just making that kind of a priority. And what we did, here's another thing. I remember when my daughter was 13, we went to Cancun, Mexico for like a whole week. And we had never been away from the kids for more than maybe 2 nights. And so it's kind of like you come back to why we hooked up.
Yeah.
And what we respect, about each other. So, that would be my biggest, what I would say to that at your age, because by 40, it almost imploded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that because you'll find a lot of people that, they'll look back and maybe they'll touch on that, but I wish I would have done this in my job. I wish I would have done this as a pastor. I wish I'd have done that in that church. And it's just another one of those stark reminders of, hey, pay attention to what you got,
Well, yeah. And I think the other thing that I've learned now is with people who disagreed with me, and we were growing rapidly. And people say my gift is the gift of spiritual irritation. Like, I don't have strong pastoral, Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like there's some of those people I look back on, and I would just say, hey, this is where we're going. Kiss my ass if you don't like it.
Right.
Does that make sense? And I look back at that and I go, oh, what, wonder how we could have done that better.
Right.
Wonder how we could do that better. So you still have to, just like Jesus in John 6, many of his disciples withdrew and followed him no more. You've got to be true to the God. You can't compromise that.
Mm-hmm.
When we went through, like in the 80s, I had our first female pastor, who was part of the teaching team. And we were probably, I remember there was some real blowback on that. And I had to fight that through. Mm-hmm. But not only because it was true, but I wanted my daughter, who was, a kid at the time, to see that she could be anything. Well, that was kind of selfish,
right.
To put those, pictures out there. Well, man, I just heard my wife come in. Hey, Carolyn, come in here a minute. Oh, she said, wait a minute. She has to go to the restroom. But,
that's all right.
That's fine. Carolyn, these are kind of real guys, man. I can't believe it.
Well, Mike, one of the things that my wife and I did, and it's been 3 years since we started this. We stumbled upon through the Alpha course. They actually have this thing called the marriage course.
Yeah. And
we decided one year at one of my last appointment, we hey, let's just see what happens. We'll offer this for couples and see what happens with it. And we're now in our 4th cycle of this, and it's been really fun. This time we're doing it a little bit differently, and she's not a part of it, but what we've decided in ours is to really kind of take that seriously. And that's definitely done a lot for not only my spiritual walk, but just the leading the church side as well.
I'll let her sit down here in a minute and talk about, these are 30.
I don't need to sit down. Hi.
Hello.
Hey, this guy's 34 and this guy's 37, 38?
36.
36. But sit down and tell them about the importance of their marriages.
Not on the spot or anything, right?
What would you like to know?
Well, we just asked Mike, what, if you could go back to our age and tell yourself something, what's that bit of advice you would give?
I would, okay. Okay. I would say, 1, know yourself enough to have an authentic relationship with your spouse.
Uh-huh.
And then know your spouse well enough that you can be authentic together. Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we didn't know ourselves when we were your age, and I'm still learning about myself.
Right.
Oh
right.
my gosh.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably in one of the biggest growth curves of my life right now, learning curve about myself. But I would say that, and then, when this authenticity, you're going to create new priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's prioritizing each other and then prioritizing the kids. And that's the order.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the kid, it's prioritizing your own relationship with Christ, then with your spouse, with your kids, and then with the church.
I think too, what
done.
No,
nailed it. That's
Nailed it,
perfect.
yes.
Thank you so much.
I also think what's important is touch that doesn't have to have sexual climax. That what you do is you lose kind of just that touch kind of thing, and then we come home and we're brain dead because we have to read with the kids, and whatever, and then you just want to watch TV or do something. And I think that time, and what is important to us, is we go to bed together and talk, or I like to just, she says I say too much, but I just like to cuddle. I think that's important. And sometimes when you're in your 30s, you don't understand cuddle.
Yeah.
And then that makes the other stuff.
Yeah, it's the personal touch that's really not sexual.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an expression of love, with no expectations, just simply that connection.
These guys are pretty young. You think they can handle this?
I think.
I totally get that. My wife's a little bit older than I am. She's nearing 40 this year, and her love language is not touch. It is very introverted, and so it's those moments when we're walking around town or we're doing something, and it's just that reach over and grab the hand and hold the hand. It's like, oh, that's it. That's the stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that because it's not all the time, and it's these really intentional moments that you take just to be there.
Yeah.
And to be present with each other.
Yeah, it's the nonverbal language.
Well, even now sometimes.
Okay, he's telling me to move.
But even now sometimes, like last week before I had to hit the road to work with some churches, she had scheduled with, it's kind of a house church that we participate in, to go to dinner with this. We were going to meet at this microbrewery and then go to dinner. Mm-hmm. And I said, hon, I got to leave so early tomorrow morning. Let's you and I maybe go to dinner, but I can't handle people. And I think sometimes we have so many things with other people we do something with, even if it's a couple, mm-hmm. that it's important that Carolyn's my safe space, and I think it's important to just, boundaries are important because sometimes the demands that come. And the other thing I learned, and this is through like people my age who mentored me at your age, Lau Schaller, for example, you've planned something with your wife, but someone in your board person calls you and said, man, we got to meet, tonight. I can get there at 6:30. Just say, oh man, I've got an appointment I can't make. Can I meet you tomorrow at 6:30 for breakfast? Mm-hmm. Don't say, well, I was going to go to dinner with my wife or go to a movie, or I was going to my kids' little soccer game, or, and what I learned at your age is say, man, I got an appointment I can't break. I don't say it's my family because they think you can break that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I found, I'm coaching my youngest daughter's basketball team, and I've blocked out in my schedule, it looks, it says an appointment. And what's really funny is if you look on the church calendar, because we use the church gym, it says Stars basketball. They have no clue whose that team is. It's just, they know that the gym's blocked off for an hour. Mm-hmm. And I've been real adamant about making sure that, especially in my children's lives, investing into them in some way, shape, or form, either coaching or doing my best to be at everything that I can be. But recognizing that there are also some times where I just can't, I have to go and talk to them about that and let them know that, hey, there are times where I have to be away. My father had a job. He was a sports information director for a junior college here in Oklahoma. And during the college sports season, we hardly ever saw him. And so I wanted to kind of be the opposite and making sure that when I do things, like when I travel, like this week I'm in Denver, and then in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be on the press side of things for General Conference with our podcast, and kind of talking to my girls about, hey, there are some times where I have to go away either to learn something like we are here at ILIF, or that there's a special general conference, and I kind of talked to them about that. And they've been real supportive on just, as long as I'm keeping that line of communication between your children and your spouse is really important.
Well, and I did the same thing. I coached all the way select ball through 7th grade. And then I knew my son was pretty good. He ended up first team All-State baseball. And he played 4 years at Penn, baseball. Mm-hmm. And, but the same, we were so involved with our kids. I mean, I would take them on trips with me. I remember my daughter was in 5th grade and I was speaking out in San Diego, and I took 2 days vacation before, and we did Monterey Bay, downtown San Francisco, and so forth. And I was speaking in Houston, and my son, I don't know how old he was, but a kid, I took him and we did the Space Museum, and an astronaut who was at the conference sent him a bunch of patches. I took them all. I did a thing in 1990 in Europe, and the whole family went, and I raised money, from people to help make that happen, because I didn't make much as a pastor.
Right.
But, that is so key. And my daughter's 41, my son's 37. Each of them have 3 kids. My son has a 4th one on the way, and they're Jesus followers, and when they see that in you, and plus not phony. Mm-hmm. So when, I went to a restaurant in the very town where I was pastoring, I got a wine at dinner or whatever, and they said we didn't play church. Mm-hmm. And also that church is not the current kind of political kind of situation where we do not challenge nationalism and, wall building and so forth. And even as my daughter, who's a dietitian, went over and worked with Palestinians in a hospital for 2 weeks. My son did part of a team that did 75 surgeries in Honduras, and spent 6 weeks in our church's medical mission in Jamaica, on off times. Mm-hmm. And what you all are doing as parents right now is absolutely essential.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, that encouragement, it goes a long ways, man, because, that's, the circles we run in, that's not always the encouragement we get. And it's certainly not the expectations that's put on us in many places.
Well, I don't know if I put it on Facebook or not, but the weekend before last, I preached at Ginsburg, and my son and his family came up. And so his kids are 7, 5, 2, and then has one on the way. Mm-hmm. And so they said, Papa, can we come up on the stage with you? So, hey, you're going to remember this. So I said, in my head, I said, okay, I'm going to do it at the benediction. And they came up, and so my 5-year-old, they're all standing in front of me, and my 5-year-old, I just thought on the spot, I said, what's the best sport? And I put it by his mouth, and he said, baseball. That's what it's. And I said to the people, hey, your priorities, what you talk about, what you truly believe, what you act will become their priorities.
Right.
What was so great is the one that's 7 was 2 there one time. And I'm preaching, and I always have like a bistro table with like a bistro chair sitting next to it, and my Bible or computer on top. And so she just walked up on the stage. I looked down, and here's my 2-year-old. So I just picked her up and sat her in that chair, and she sat there for the rest of the message. So then before I turned leadership over a year and a half ago, she said, Papa, she'd been 5, I guess. Papa, when can I preach with you again? I thought, so that is preach, and you remember that is too? So on Father's Day, I used her in my sermon, and I put her in the chair. Mm-hmm. And so I would ask questions, and what's the most, why are parents so important? And I remember she said, well, they protect you. They read the Bible to you. You just think, and then I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now she was 5, but she goes, I want to be a pediatrician. And she said pediatrician, or Dad's a surgeon. But what's amazing is he's got for his kids scrubs in their size, and he's got Dr. Slaughter on their scrubs. And not this year, but a year ago, the day after Thanksgiving, he had 3 surgeries in the morning. She'd have been 6. He put her in her scrubs, set her on a chair in there and told her, don't touch anything blue. She had to scrub in, you know.
Right.
I don't know if I could watch 3 surgeries.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So those priorities, I mean, she's, and so that's what made it a good message. And anybody thought a little 5-year-old girl, you know, sitting up there was, you know.
Right.
But all of that comes. And that happened again last week. Papa, at the end of worship, can we get up there and play drums? Well, people may still be walking out or anything. But last week I had my 2-year-old up there banging on, you know. So when they do that, you know, what good is it if we win the world and lose our families?
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's been that's one of the things I miss in my current appointment, is that we really haven't been able to create a space for my children to really kind of have their own space in the church. Like, we've done it before where they've been able to, like, you know, either acolyte or that sort of thing. And we've, but now lately, the last few weeks, the fun thing has been they enjoy turning off the TVs and the extra lights and all that stuff because they know that they're helping the church. And they've said that. My youngest, this last Sunday, sitting in the children's moment, my poor associate pastor, I don't remember what question my associate pastor had asked in the children's moment, but my youngest looked at her and just said, why don't we have a food pantry in this church? Because her reference point has been in the last 2 churches we've been in, we've had food pantries, and that was my primary responsibility, was running the food pantry. So that's what she knows, and she's struggled with this church not having a food pantry on campus. And the associate pastor said, well, just talk to your daddy. and
you know, I think that we started, one, I believe in long-term appointments. You know, nothing would have happened at Ginghamsburg if I was just there 7 years. Remember, I was there 38 years and 2 months as lead pastor and still connected. We started in this literally 2-room country church, a food pantry and a closet. We now operate 3 choice food pantries, you know, with grocery carts and you know, so forth in 3 different areas that served over 60,000 people last year. And so again, what you start in a small closet can expand to something incredible, but you have to commit your life to it. You know, I was 27 when I went to Ginghamsburg. I was 66 when I turned leadership over, you know, at Ginghamsburg. You got to, you know, commit your life to it. And the calling is not ever done. I mean, a true calling, it changes. You know, like I say, the first 40 years of Moses' life, he was concentrating on building a career, which, you know, and the next middle was midlife crisis. And if you don't deal with your, you know, stuff, then you suppress, whether it's pornography or anything else, it implodes, which it did on him. And for him, it was anger management. You know, and then the last third is where you really come into the fruits. You know, even in your old age, you will still produce fruit, the word, you know, says.
Well, I know, Mike, you've got a lot on your plate still, even now. I just want to thank you for all that you've done for the kingdom. I know for me, when I was fresh out of seminary and in my first appointment, one of the first books I picked up was your Change the World book. And it's pretty much tattered on my shelf now, 10 years and 4 appointments later. I still reference it in some ways, especially in regards to finances for the church and all that stuff. And anytime something new comes out from you, I'm always pushing it on at least 1 or 2 Sunday school classes, because I always say, hey, this is going to be solid because Mike does great work, because his heart's in the right place. And I can't thank you enough for your kingdom work and what you're still continuing to do now. And I know we appreciate you. And we just literally, when we've kind of had this list of people that we've always wanted to have on the show, and we've sent out emails or Facebook messages, and when they say yes, we're just like, oh wow, like, we were excited when you said yes, and I know, like I said, for me, I've just appreciated all that you've done, and that you have definitely made a difference on my ministry career and some of the influences that you've done, and I'm just thankful for you and all that you've done.
Well, I'm honored that you guys asked me. I just wanted, I wanted to do it. It was just finding the slide. Book was, manuscript is huge to get out there. And so am I going to see you then at the Special General Conference?
Yes, I will actually be in the press room. Okay. I'll be, I don't know what I'm doing or anything yet, but I've been credentialed to be in the press room my hope would be is that with this, I want to sit down with people, try to sit down with people as much as possible and kind of still do this and have a small little interview and talk about what their experience was and share with people. Because I know I've been a part of a delegation. Zach and I were actually, how we met actually was being part of Global Young People's Convocation.
Oh yeah,
about 8 years ago. And seeing that experience really kind of shaped me. And one of the things that I've seen, one of the things we saw in that event is that we saw, even though there was some struggles and some difficult conversations happening, we did see a lot of life out of that event. And I want to be able to make sure that gets shown too, because I know that there's going to be other people who won't necessarily show that light. And I want to see and I kind of want to show that, hey, no matter what happens, that we can still press on and continue to make disciples of Jesus Christ.
Oh, and that's it. The local church is key. I keep telling everybody, I said, man, if I was McDonald's, I'm not thinking about the bureaucratic corporate. I'm looking at the local franchise, because that's the only place burgers move out of.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying that metaphorically, because that's not the healthiest thing to eat. That's it. That's where. And I just see incredible ministries as I travel, that whatever we do there is not going to affect it.
Right.
Which I think is absolutely so important. The other thing for you are both. Now, Zach, do you pastor a local church?
Yeah, so I've got 3 churches up in rural Montana.
Okay, so that's not Bruce O's area, is it? Is he bishop there?
No, that's Bishop Karen Oliveto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We even talked to Karen. Karen and I know each other.
Yeah.
Look at this base camp we have. We only take 20 people, and we really get into we do it at Ginghamsburg, and my partner in ministry, Karen Perry Smith, we do it in Ginghamsburg, and two of our people that came out in the last 2 years are doing. One started a bakery down in North Carolina that only a 501c only employs just released prisoners, to teach them a career, and it's doing great. And another started a farm in a very rural mountainous area, and whatever pork he sells to restaurants allows him to have equal amount to give to food pantries.
Oh, wow. And
so all the restaurants around this region, purchased from him. So we go to our 501c3s, we go to our inner city, campuses and so forth. So look at that, MikeSlaughter.com, look at the base camp stuff, because I think both of you would, benefit. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you. We noticed that you had some connections with some people that have been on before. Matt Mioski and Jacob Armstrong have been two guys.
I worked with those guys. Yeah.
We've enjoyed getting to know them just through this. And it was literally, we knew that these were young guys that are having books come out. And so we were just like, hey, we have this podcast. Would you like to come and talk about your book? And they were, and we've had some really good conversations. Jacob and I have really, in the last few months, I've really talked a lot about some of the stuff that he's doing, and I'm trying to take some of his small group stuff and trying to getting it incorporated in the church that I serve.
And I want to tell you that, now you're seeing the network connection. Another one you need to connect to is Pastor Rachel Billups, who is the campus pastor of our largest church campus. So this is the network that I'm working in right now, and I want to get both those guys. Lisa down in North Carolina, Ibua or something. Rachel, and we're going to do a video thing, I think, around this new book I'm doing.
Very cool.
In a living room kind of environment, and talk about stuff, the politic of the kingdom, the authority of Scripture. One thing you might look up, David Watson and I did a lecture at United Seminary a week ago Sunday night on the authority. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it yet.
The authority of Scripture, him from a traditionalist perspective and me from a centrist perspective.
Very cool. No, we'll check that out. We'll put links of all of that on our podcast with this episode, so that, as people hear this, they'll be able to go check out that too, find it easy.
Man, well, it's so exciting, like me just now connecting to you guys, because this is the generation where this seismic shift is happening in ministry, that together, we can do a new thing, even if we're still in a system. We don't always have to obey the system.
That's right.
And that was actually something I picked up from you early on, and I've kind of modeled that in some ways, that I was placed in my current appointment because of what I've done in other churches, of being able to kind of be a little bit of a disruptor, and but bringing people back and in a sense of healing and a sense of growth. Like I said, it really did start with that Change the World book for me. And seeing things differently and trying to engage the world missionally and just in a spiritual aspect that, I'm still doing that and still loving it. And
good.
Like I said, when you said yes, I was so excited that you were able to meet with us. And that what's really cool is that when we normally do this, Zach's usually in Montana and I'm in Oklahoma. And so it's kind of almost like this, but we knew that this week, when you responded back to my email of saying, hey, we'd really like to connect, that we knew we'd be together this week.
Well, that's so neat. Did I see both of you together? Like, yeah.
And so we thank you for your time. We want to encourage those that are listening to go to our website, beardedtheologians.com, and check out our great blog post. Hopefully by this time, the Beer and Hymns reflection will be on there. We had a really great time doing Beer and Hymns the other night here in Denver. And so we'll have a reflection on that, and then we'll hopefully have some new content up with that, and then go click buy and buy some of our stuff, Bearded Theologians gear. It really does, whatever little money we get does go back into the podcast to help us be able to do things. And so for Mike, we give thanks for you to come on with us. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
We hope you've enjoyed the conversations that we've had today on the Bearded Theologians Beardcast, and we'd encourage you to continue those conversations online at beardedtheologians.com or on our Facebook page. We also hope that you pick up a couple of coffee mugs to satisfy your coffee mug collection. Have a good day.